Welcome to me and my McLean. If you're tuning in for this episode, I want to talk about a lot of things that people really never talk about, and they're important things. And I don't know why people don't talk about these things, but you know, it's springtime, and some of the things I really hate to hear are the word waking up. Your lawn is waking up. Your lawn is getting ready to wake up. These are the sort of things I want to talk about. I want to talk about just things that people don't talk about from the beginning to the end of the season, and why you're probably having issues that when somebody tells you to do something or what you should do to do this and it doesn't work, or maybe it does work barely, things that you just never hear. I want to jump into all those things because, man, it's funny how it just like the light switch goes on and all these videos start coming out. But everything, all these, lawn care guys just come out right off the bat and they just start jumping into your lawn's waking up, don't do this, don't do that, this, that, everything else, and apply this and don't apply that, and it's too early to do this, don't mow, don't do this, and there's just all these do's and don'ts and things, and what am I supposed to do because this guy says this and this guy says that, and boom, 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 where are we at? So I'm going to just start from the beginning of my journey on my lawn, because I've always kind of had a nice lawn, but when I pulled this tree out in my front yard, I wanted to really have a nice lawn. I wanted to put a golf course type lawn in. So I'm a low mow guy. I do Kentucky Bluegrass, I do bent grass. I mow really low. And so I want to talk about just all these things because I started watching YouTube and lawn care and all this stuff and everything that everybody was saying. And then I just was kind of thinking about it, and I was like, oh man, this is a lot of stuff. And I had a really nice yard and I didn't do all this stuff. I didn't have all these weed problems. I didn't have all these disease problems. And maybe it's because of where I live. I don't know. Maybe where you live, you have a lot of these problems. But some of the things I'm going to talk about today are going to probably tell you why you're having some of these problems that you see in your yard. So let's just jump right into it and let's just start. Okay, so this is Friday morning. I wake up Friday morning, the weather said, hey, we're gonna have a little snow, rain mix and all this kind of stuff. I got up at like 4 in the morning. I go outside, start the coffee. I look outside, just raining. Great, just rain. Then I look outside just before I leave for work, and it's this right here. There's like 2-3 inches of snow on the ground. That's in like 2 hours. And ruined my whole weekend because it took all day yesterday for this stuff to melt. But basically it snowed all day Friday. I know some of the people in the other parts of the country, this is what they deal with. We don't really deal with this out here, not that much. And this is probably a reason why things are a little bit different for us in Western Washington than they are maybe where you are. And that's why I want to talk about a lot of these lawn care practices that maybe just don't make sense to you, or you follow them and then they don't work or they don't help. So the snow's melting. I really wanted to mow today. And I mow whether my lawn needs to be mowed or not in the winter. I mow all year round. I mow every weekend. And unless it's really, really sopping wet, I don't mow. So that's just me. I mow at 2 millimeters on my putting green, and I mow at 8 millimeters on my Kentucky Bluegrass. And then I take care of my neighbor's lawn, Wilson. He has perennial ryegrass, really nice, looks really great all year round. Very green. Perennial ryegrass is a great grass to grow. So I'm gonna just put on a video here, and I'm just gonna talk about a few things while this video is playing here. This is just mowing the lawn and stuff like that. So everybody talks about pre-emergent, how important it is, when to start it, when you need to do it, all those sorts of things. And, a lot of us talk about POA and treating POA, in the fall and in, because they say in the fall is when it germinates, when the temperatures start dropping below 70 degrees. And, yeah, that's true and all that. I had my batch of POA, and I'm going to show you a little bit of how I'm dealing with it and what I got going on this year here in a minute. But my big thing is POA may start in the fall and I don't really treat for it. I do a little bit, but not that much. I use tenacity to deal with POA. I don't do any pre-emergence. I don't do anything like that because I don't have a weed problem. But maybe you have a weed problem and you want to do pre-emergence. You want to use dithiopyr or prodiamine or something like that. You know, right here. These are all the products I recommend. I don't get any kind of kickback on this. This is what I talk about, and this is what I talk about how to deal with weeds in your yard. If you like to just use big box store stuff, use the Bio Advanced 5-in-1 and use the Weed Stop Spectricide. They both have liquids, so you can get the hose sprayer bottle, or you can get the concentrate, or you can get the granules. I really don't recommend using granules. I mean, when you're doing like a pre-emergent, granules are fine. But when you're doing a weed, trying to control active weeds growing, I definitely recommend using a hose-on sprayer or spraying for your weeds, because you get a lot more control and you're gonna do a lot more damage to the weeds. With the granules and just attacking weeds, it's gotta hit the weed, it's gotta be on the weed, and it's gotta get watered in, it's gotta be absorbed and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of a hit or miss kind of a thing. Generally, it works really well, okay? Don't get me wrong, it does work okay. But you're gonna get a better outcome if you use a liquid when you're trying to do post-emergent type control. So anyways, these are the weed controls I talk about. Bio Advanced has like dithiopyr, and Spectricide has either sulfentrazone in the liquid, and it has, I believe it has dithiopyr in the granule. I'm not really sure, I can't remember. But then you can also buy these products down here, Dimension, which is dithiopyr, and Barricade, which is prodiamine, and then you got the sulfentrazone, which is liquid. There is no granule sulfentrazone as far as I understand. I use sulfentrazone sometimes, not a lot. I don't really do, like I said, any kind of weed prevention, because I'm going to talk about why I don't do it. There's a specific reason, and it doesn't have anything to do with anything other than nutrient control. So these are the products I recommend you use if you're going to do a pre-emergent. And just remember, if you're doing a pre-emergent, you're not going to be able to do any kind of seeding. Okay? The only type of seeding you can do with any kind of pre-emergent is tenacity. And I have some tenacity on the floor down here. I have a little small bottle, and this is what I use, but I don't use tenacity so much for weed control as I do for bent grass, because I have to control bent grass in my Kentucky Bluegrass because of my mowing and all that. I have them in the same area, and the lawnmower carries bent grass to my Kentucky Bluegrass, and it grows in there. Maybe later I'll be able to show you some of that. Anyways, this is the best way to start your year. But I use tenacity starting in January, okay? I put it down usually in September, October as a pre-emergent for POA, and I usually don't get it. This year I did not do that. I was way busy with a bunch of projects, and I didn't do it. So I didn't get tenacity down, and I got hit with some POA. Not bad, but most of it was along the sidewalk. And here's the other thing. This is why you're gonna get a lot of POA on the edges of your grass and around the edges of your grass. It's that whole wind blowing thing. When the wind blows, it blows these seeds around. When these seeds get blown around, they get blown and they get caught like right on that edging of your yard between the sidewalk and your yard. And my biggest outbreaks were right along the sidewalk, okay? And because I didn't spray any kind of pre-emergent down like tenacity, and that's all I use is tenacity, because I control bent grass along with the POA. And it is a pre and post emergent as well. So I had some POA, I sprayed ethofumicate on it, and I went after it really aggressively, and it took out, you know, parts of my lawn. I'm gonna show you the patches of that, but I did that on purpose because this year, that's one of the things I'm gonna concentrate on is the regrowth of that. I'm not scared to ruin my lawn. I'm not scared to tear my lawn up. I'm not scared to do anything. It's actually more fun because then I can, you know, maybe make a video or do something and explain to people this is how you're gonna come back from it. So last year, the same thing, but I did it differently when I took out some POA. And you know, POA is just a reality in life. But the main way I control it is tenacity. I start using it in January because I didn't spray any tenacity in my backyard. And about February, late February, we had some warm days in February and January. And I just got attacked with POA in my backyard. So, you know, people always talk about POA as a fall type grass that starts sprouting and doing all that. I had 0 POA all season through the winter when it first started and everything in my backyard. And then all of a sudden, about March into February, all this POA started popping up. And I hadn't sprayed the backyard. I had sprayed my front yard, but I did not spray my backyard because I was just trying to control bent grass. And so with that, I went out there with my weed puller. I pulled all the POA out and I took plugs, little pieces from my side patch of grass here, and I just plugged the holes of everything that I pulled out. So I pulled all the POA by hand. Probably took me about an hour and a half to pull all the POA and put plugs in and stuff like that. But that's how I controlled it. But my main point here is that POA, at least in Western Washington, it doesn't care fall, spring, summer. It comes at many times of the year. And I'm watching some of these YouTube guys that do their little, you know, vlogs and stuff like that. And, you know, one of the guys is just talking about all of a sudden, here it is, you know, March, and he's got all this POA in his yard. He didn't have any POA all winter long. You know, he didn't have any snow or anything like that on his ground, and he was, you know, didn't know what to do about it. He, you know, was going to use velocity. You know, velocity is one of those things you can do. So dealing with pre-emergence and all that sort of stuff, if you put a pre-emergent down in September, it's going to be wasted and gone by January. That's why I suggest starting to spray some tenacity or something like that. Or you can just put down another application of pre-emergent on your lawn. That pre-emergent is going to work then until March, because pre-emergent generally works for about 3 months. Dithiopyr is the weakest of the two between prodiamine and dithiopyr. But dithiopyr has better qualities for controlling some post-emergent crabgrass. So there's all these trade-offs depending upon how you're trying to deal with these sorts of things, where you really need to understand, you know, what should I use? I mean, I hear people saying, hey, put your prodiamine down right now. I'm like, why would I put prodiamine down when right now, especially if my temperatures are warm, crabgrass starts germinating around 57, 58 degrees. So I probably want to put down some dithiopyr, because dithiopyr is not only going to do some pre-emergent on crabgrass, but it's also going to do some post-emergent. And then maybe I'm going to want to come back with sulfentrazone in maybe 2 months, say late May, 1st of June, put down some sulfentrazone and get a covering of some extra pre-emergent care to help me with crabgrass, okay? Because that dithiopyr may wear out, okay? So these are just suggestions. I'm just kind of going through the things that I see, and then the things that I hear and the practices I hear, you know, other people telling you to do. And, you know, maybe you're having some of these issues, maybe you're not. Maybe you live in an area, I mean, I know some people are mowing already. Their Bermuda grass is coming alive. It's really warm, 80 degrees, 70 degrees. You know, here in Western Washington, we're not going to be there till mid-April, and our grass is going to start growing. I got all excited a couple weeks ago when it got warm and the grass started growing, and I was mowing and I was happy and all that kind of stuff. And then we get this cold spell for a week. So we're up and down basically till the mid-April. So those are the points I wanted to make with pre-emergence and that sort of thing. You can do pre-emergent applications all year long. Just mix it up. Use some prodiamine, use some dithiopyr, use some sulfentrazone. You know, use either a big box type spectricide or bio-advanced. Do those sorts of things, but I would do them all year long, and I would do them every 3 months, okay? Even in the winter, okay? Unless you got snow on the ground. If you got snow on the ground, you can't put anything down, okay? But I'm talking in the places like, you know, here in Western Washington, we are actively growing up and down all through the winter. So this is why we have these problems, and this is how I take care of it and how I deal with it. So that's one of my first points I wanted to make with weed control, and just some of the myths and things like that, how you can deal with some of these problems with POA. POA is the biggest problem that I think a lot of people deal with. So I'm showing a video of my putting green. So my putting green, I have never sprayed any kind of herbicide. No pre-emergent, no post-emergent, no anything. Never, don't do it. Here's why. We're gonna get in the nuts and bolts about nutrients. I have a camera on just everything that I use, and it's 3, 6, 7, 8 things I use in my yard year round. 3 of them are grass seed. Three different types of grass seed. So I technically only use 5 products on my lawn all year round. And what I don't use is phosphorus. Here's why. Many people don't know phosphorus is a regulated, controlled nutrient. If you look it up for your state, you'll get information regarding phosphorus and when you're allowed to apply it. Now, generally speaking, whenever you do any kind of new seeding project, you can apply it. But do you need to apply it? Probably not, okay? If you've got phosphorus in your ground, adding more is just like if your car is full of gas, the tank is full, and you want to add more gas, you can't add more gas. It's just going to overflow and flow out. It's the same thing with your lawn, okay? If you have phosphorus in your lawn and it's, say, 40 parts per million, something like that, 50 parts per million, there's no reason to add anything, okay? Because that's in your lawn. And probably on top of that, you probably have some unsoluble phosphorus in your lawn as well. And you know, turf grass has a great way of solubilizing unsoluble nutrients in the lawn. You know, your roots of your turf grass work with the microbes. They talk to each other through chemical reactions and things like that, where the turf grass will say, hey, microbe, I need some phosphorus. We're getting a little low. You don't have any down there, so can you hook me up? And the microbes say, yeah, we got you. And what they do is they start reacting with the unsoluble and the chemicals that are being released, the enzymes that are being released by the turf grass, and they start solubilizing nutrients, phosphorus. The big thing about this is weed control. Okay, when you have too much phosphorus in your soil, it's a great grounds for weeds. Weeds love over-nutrient soil. They also like under-nutrient soil, okay? So this is a way you can control weeds in your grass, is by not over-fertilizing. If you don't need phosphorus, don't put it down. And I mean, if your grass is not saying, hey, I'm low on phosphorus, I'm showing you purple veins in my new grass because I got nothing, that's when you need to start adding phosphorus, because you know your grass is going to react almost immediately to it. You apply say a 10-2-5 or something like that. You know, you want to apply your nutrients in a 4-1-2 basis. 4 nitrogen, 2 phosphorus, 1 phosphorus, 2 potassium. That's the ratio you want to apply any nutrients at. So when you look at the bag, you need to figure out, is it a 4-1-2? Okay, that's how you know if you're applying the right kind, because your turf grass, it can't utilize any of the nutrients in your lawn in any different of a ratio, 4-1-2. Okay, because the nitrogen controls the amount of uptake of the phosphorus and the potassium. Okay, that's it. That's why nitrogen is pretty much the only thing you really got to put in your lawn. Okay. Now I'm going to jump back for just 1 second, because there was one thing I wanted to talk about, and that was soil testing. Okay, you don't need to do a soil test hardly ever. There's very few reasons you need to do it, but if you think you need to do it, the only reason I recommend doing it is if you're brand new to your yard. You've never dealt with it, you're putting a new yard in, and you want to make sure things go great. There's a couple of important things to learn about your soil. It has nothing to do with N, P, or K, or iron or micronutrients. It has nothing to do with any of that. The key things you want to understand with your soil, if you don't know what's going on with it, is your CEC. That's why you have to do a Malic 3. You can use your local extension office for soil testing. Okay, local extension is with your county or your state, and they work with universities, and they come up with programs for turf grass, but they also usually provide soil testing. And a lot of places provide it for free, and they use Mehlich 3. Okay, it's very important because a My Soil test is not going to give you this number. Okay, and a My Soil test is worthless because a My Soil test, all it's about is telling you what product to buy. And generally speaking, they're telling you what product to buy totally wrong. You probably don't even need it. Okay, I would never do a My Soil test if you want to get any information about your soil. Don't do it. That means Lawn Mastery, any of those that use the resin exchange, the liquid, the little liquid with the pouch you put the soil into, you should be sending a dry sample of soil to a testing site. That's the only type of soil you should be sending in. Your local extension, if you look it up online, you'll probably find something within your county, and you'll probably find a free soil testing process. They're going to use Mehlich 3. Mehlich 3 is going to give you CEC, and it's going to give you pH. Those are the only two numbers you're going to care about with your brand new lawn that you're putting in and you know nothing about your soil. There is no other reason, unless you have some real serious problem in your soil where you are just deficient constantly in nutrients, you might want to do a test just to see what's going on, okay? But technically speaking, a soil test is not going to tell you about unsoluble nutrients like phosphorus and potassium. It's going to be there in your soil, it just may not be soluble. A soil test like My Soil, Lawn Mastery, any of those soil kits that I was talking about, the resin exchange, they're not going to be able to tell you about unsoluble. Neither is the Mehlich 3. Mehlich 3 is not going to tell you about unsoluble nutrients in your grass. That's why your eyes are your best soil test for nutrient deficiencies. You have to see what's going on. And I can show some of that down here. Oops, sorry, my video stopped. I didn't. Let me just fix this real quick. There we go. So why do we want to know CEC and why do we want to know pH? Okay, because a lot of people will tell you as well, pH is really something you don't care about. Okay, if you know what it is, you just kind of know how to deal with it. You really don't need to do anything to fix pH unless you have like a, above 9 type of a pH in your soil, or you have a below 5 or 4, you have a significantly low. But if your grass looks great and is doing great and is reacting to nutrients, you really don't need to do anything to control your pH, okay? But the reason why you want to know where it is because then you want to know what kind of fertilizer to put on it. We're talking nitrogen only. Okay, when I talk nutrients and fertilizer, I'm talking nitrogen, okay? Nitrogen is either going to be depending upon what you use, ammonium sulfate or urea. Ammonium nitrate, you may be able to get your hands on, I don't know, but that's pretty well regulated. But your soil basically it is going to turn any kind of urea or ammonium sulfate into ammonium nitrate because nitrogen, this is the reason why they can't test for it in a soil test, is it's always changing forms. It's volatilizing, it evaporates, it does all these tricky things, and it's really hard to measure. So that's another reason why the whole My Soil kit, Lawn Mastery, and all those sorts of things, they give you a nitrogen reading, but you know what, it's so inaccurate. There's no way they can accurately tell you how much nitrogen you have in your soil. So the reason why I use urea is because I'm in Western Washington. Moss is a big problem here. And this is another reason why I like to know my pH, because low pH is a great environment for moss. Okay, urea will raise the pH in your soil very, very, very slowly, but with all the nutrients that I put in my lawn, well, I don't mean all, I mean 2 of them. I put iron and urea, and I stopped using iron with sulfur in it. And the reason why is because sulfur lowers the pH in your soil. So now I'm using an iron, a ferrous sulfate heptahydrate, which is a powder, but I mix it as a liquid and I spray it on my lawn, but it has no sulfur in it, okay? There's a reason why you might want to have sulfur in your iron, and there's a reason why you might not. But lowering your pH, if you live in Western Washington or an area where your soil, you're prone to getting moss, you don't want to have a low pH. You want to use things to help raise your pH, or at least keep it up in the 6s, high 6s, okay? And the only reason I say that is because that's the area where it's going to be a little harder for the moss to grow. I've controlled my soil to a pH of about 6.5 for the last 2 years. I haven't had any moss attacks. Now, it doesn't mean I don't have moss. I have moss all over my house, on the ground and stuff. The north side of my house covered with moss, okay? The beds of my yard get moss a lot, around the trees and all that sort of stuff. My backyard, I get moss. I don't get moss in my grass though, okay? Because I'm controlling the soil in my grass. I don't control the soil anywhere else in my yard. I just let it be. And I get moss there and I have to spray moss out, but I don't get it in my grass anymore. I've lived here for 20 years and moss, I've battled so many times, and I don't know how many times I ripped out my yard to get rid of the moss and start over to try to not have moss, and I didn't understand that pH was probably one of my problems. Now, water and shade and all those sorts of things have a lot to do with it as well, but I finally learned controlling my pH is what my problem is, because I always used ammonium sulfate. Ammonium sulfate is going to lower the pH in your soil when you use it, okay? Not just like urea, not by a much, but it's going to lower the pH just enough to kind of tick it down, tick it down, tick it down. When I started testing my soil for pH and doing soil tests, I found out that I was like 5.6, 5.4. You know, it's a little low. I mean, it does. My lawn always looked great. I didn't have any problems with nutrients. That wasn't my problem. I had problems with moss, and I wanted to get rid of the moss. I was tired of having to put moss out of my yard once a month or whatever to kill moss, and have all these black patches then in my yard. So once I finally learned this control method for dealing with moss, I use urea. That's all I use. And I do my own soil testing for pH. I have a video on my channel about it. Very, very simple. It's a $30 test probe that you buy online, and you basically do a 50-50 mix of deionized water and soil, dry soil. You mix it together, 50-50 ratio, whatever you want to do, 10 grams, 20 grams, 30 grams of each. Let it sit for 30 minutes, put your probe in it, measure it, see what your pH is, okay? I've shown with my soil test, my testing method is dead on accurate with a Malick 3 test. It's basically the same test that they do, okay? And I just constantly monitor my pH. Not that I'm gonna do anything about it. I don't add lime, I don't do any of these crazy things because it's low. I just change the nutrients I'm using, the fertilizer, the nitrogen, and I'm using urea, 4600. It's all I use, okay? And because that's all I use it once a month, and I put about 4 pounds a year of nitrogen on my soil. And I probably put nitrogen down maybe 9, 10 months out of the year. And I put it down in small doses every month. And in the wintertime, there's a couple of months where I just don't do it because your grass is just not doing anything, so there's no reason to put nitrogen. But if I know my grass is actively growing, and I know that by mowing. If I'm mowing and I'm cutting and I'm getting, you know, a third of a blade, I know I'm still getting some growth, so I can still keep adding nitrogen. I know my microbes are still active, okay? Anyways, I put down about 1/3 of a pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet once a month, and I do it in liquid form because I can't put down granules on my low mow grass, especially my putting green. My Kentucky Bluegrass at 8 millimeters, it can kind of deal with it, but you get polka dotting where the urea lands. That area just kind of creates a circle of darker green where it landed because it doesn't cover as well. So I have to use liquid. So I just buy regular urea in pellet form. It melts down really quickly in water, and I mix it with a mixer, and about every other month I put iron in it. So that kind of covers nitrogen and phosphorus. Potassium is kind of the same thing, getting back to nutrients. The reason why you don't want to apply a bunch of potassium on your lawn, despite what you hear about it being a disease preventer and all that kind of stuff, it may help prevent disease, but potassium only helps prevent disease when it's in heat, or stress, when it's in stress, okay? If you're getting heat stress on your grass, There just has to be potassium available, okay? Just soluble, available for the plant to take up, because what's gonna happen is the plant's gonna want some potassium to take up to create that enzyme it needs to help fight off the heat stress, okay? By adding potassium, unless you're deficient in potassium, it's doing nothing. It's just, again, you're filling your car up with gas, it's full. Can't put any more gas in it because it's already full. Same thing with your yard. If you've got potassium in your lawn, in your soil, if you add more, you're doing nothing, okay? It's not fixing the problem, okay? Unless you have a deficiency in potassium. And how you're gonna see that is a browning in your yard. And the last point I'm gonna make about nutrients is N, P, and K are all mobile nutrients. The phosphorus and the potassium, your plant, the grass, will steal from the older grass blades the nutrients that it has and that it's using. It will take that from them and give it to the new growth. And this is how you can tell if you have a deficiency, okay? If your old growth is starting to brown and your new growth is growing in nice and healthy, that means your new growth is getting the nutrients it needs, but your old growth is losing it, okay? Because your plant is stealing it from it, okay? And like I said, with phosphorus, you're gonna look for purple veining, okay? With potassium, you're gonna look for browning and dying. And you know, I know that's a symptom and a sign for lots of different things, and that's why potassium deficiencies can get misread, okay? But generally speaking, you will never see a phosphorus or a potassium deficiency because they are naturally occurring in your lawn, okay, from the environment. And every year there's a cycle. And right now we're just coming out of that cycle where your lawn is actually getting nutrients built up in it from all the organic material that's come in your lawn from the fall and the mowing and all that sort of things. You know, when you mow and you don't bag your grass and it's composting back in your yard, you know, that's how you're helping your yard, you know, keep up with those natural processes for phosphorus and potassium to be available in your lawn. And if it's not available and it's unsoluble, if it's the ability for the plant to solubilize it is 100%. It can say, hey, I need it, give it to me. If the microbes can't get any to produce, then it's gonna start having a deficiency, it's gonna start showing those signs. Now, we're gonna talk about CEC because that's the other part of a soil test that I wanted to talk about and I wanted to touch on. That's important for you to know. And this is just a one-time thing, okay? You either have a good CEC or you have a low or a high. Okay, what is CEC? CEC is just your soil's ability to maintain or hold nutrients, okay? And this is how it works. A low CEC means you have a sandy soil. Sandy soil, nutrients can't cling on to the soil particles, to the soil the soil's charge, you know, positive or negative. It has less ability to be able to be retained by the soil, and it generally leaches out or runs off or whatever. Low CEC is like something like maybe a 9 or lower on a Malick 3 test, probably 10 or lower. It's gonna just, the lower the CEC number, generally the more sandy the soil is. And this is where you need to kind of pay attention to your nutrients and your plant's ability. Use your eyes, see what's going on with it. Do I need to add some of these things? Do I not? Okay. A higher CEC up in the high teens, up into the 20s or 30s or whatever, it's gonna mean you have clay soil. Clay soil has a great ability to retain nutrients. It holds on to it. It gets overloaded with it because there's, you know, it clings onto it and it like holds onto it forever. So you're gonna have a less need to actually apply any kind of nutrients. Now, nitrogen is one of those things you always got to apply because nitrogen is the most active nutrient in your soil. Okay, it's always changing form, it's volatilizing, it's evaporating, it's leaching, it's doing all these things, it's changing forms all the time. So nitrogen is just constantly changing. So that's why you need to keep adding it, because it changes, it gets absorbed, it gets burned to help burn the potassium, to use the potassium, to use the phosphorus. So high CEC is going to mean you have a clay soil, and you're just going to want to be a little bit easier on the nutrients you're putting in there. Okay, let your plant uptake all that nutrients. I wouldn't add any phosphorus to anything above, you know, a 14 or 13 CEC. I wouldn't add any phosphorus or any potassium, because you probably don't need it, and you probably never will in your entire life, in the soil's entire life. Probably won't ever need to add that. It's just something that's going to create that problem. I need to back up to potassium, because the one thing I didn't tell you about with potassium use and overuse is that the overuse of potassium actually creates an environment to more exposure to disease. If you have a lot of disease problems, okay, and you're adding potassium, potassium just increases that chance for disease, whether it's dollar spot, brown spot, molds, all those sorts of things. I mean, I think it's funny, because I do watch a lot of lawn care channels, and I don't watch them anymore to learn anything. I watch to learn and see what they're doing wrong and why they're having some of these problems they're having. One guy in particular always has disease problems, but he always adds phosphorus and potassium all the time in you know, wrong ratios at that. You know, if you're applying a 13, 13, 13 or whatever, 17, 17, 17, if you do that more than once a year, way overload, way bad for your lawn. Weeds, disease, period, okay? If you're doing a seeding, you can add it if you want. I have never added any starter fertilizer on any seeding project I've ever done. I have 4 that I just did last year. They all did perfectly fine with no starter fertilizer. But I do use compost in the dirt. Compost is going to help provide that phosphorus and that potassium, because it's going to be a naturally occurring through that composting action with the microbes. It's going to make the microbes active, okay? Just like the word feeding your soil. I hate to hear that term. I hate it so much that it drives me nuts, because you know what? You don't need to feed your microbes to make more microbes. You don't. You have millions and millions and millions of microbes in a teaspoon of dirt, okay? Microbes, if you didn't have any microbes, okay, there would be so many issues in your yard that would be the least of your problems, okay? It would mean you probably had a nuclear radioactive leak in your yard somewhere, and it's killed all these microbes. Microbes are so abundant, there is no feeding them, okay? I'm not going to touch on that too much, because I haven't really dove really hardly into all these products. It's kind of one of the things I'm working on to start understanding more of, but you don't need to feed microbes. Molasses, amino acids, all these sorts of things, you know, a waste of your time and a waste of your money, okay? And that's what a lot of these products are that, you know, people push on you and want you to buy from their store or from their wherever. You know, there's all these guys that have created their own lawn care products and stuff like that, and they're just pushing these products on you because they want you to buy them at a really high rate. I know of a couple of them that are out there. There's one on the East Coast, there's one on the West Coast, there's some in between and in the middle, you know. These guys are all over the place that have created their own. I'm not saying all of them have created bad ones, but if you're buying something that they say that you need to use more than one product and it contains something more than nitrogen, they're probably just trying to sell you something, okay? So those are the things I wanted to touch on with nutrients. I'm on my 4th year now. This will be my 4th season of a nitrogen only nutrient process and iron. I use iron as well. And I use iron really for the green up, but as well for moss. It kills moss. And it's not that I get moss coming in, but it's just something that I use to kind of help, you know, boost killing that moss. One of the reasons why you want to use an iron product with sulfur in it, especially if you have a high pH, okay? If you want to use an iron product, you should only apply a liquid iron product, because a granular iron product is generally not going to do any good for your lawn. It's it's gonna oxidize out within a couple of hours, okay? I don't care whether it's chelated, not chelated, I don't care any of that stuff. I don't care what your pH is, all that kind of stuff. You know, generally speaking, in most cases, when you apply a granular iron product, you're really just absolutely doing nothing for your lawn. Now, when you apply a liquid nitrogen product or iron product, it's gonna do immediate response. And it's not immediate response because your plant's reacting to it, it's immediate response because of staining. Okay, you're gonna see a deeper, darker green, but it basically is just through the staining process of iron. Okay, whether it's chelated or not. But the reason why you want sulfur in your iron, especially if you have a higher pH soil, is the sulfur helps reduce the pH at the root tips where the roots are trying to absorb the iron. And iron basically oxidizes in higher pHs, whether it's chelated or not chelated. You know, it's gonna oxidize, but slowly or quickly, it doesn't matter. But you know, a couple of hours is a couple of hours, half a day, whatever, sometimes maybe a day, okay? But the basic bottom line is when you apply iron on your lawn, if it's not in a liquid form, you're not gonna get any response. Generally speaking, you might see a little bit of a response in a couple of days, but for the most part, if you apply a liquid iron product, you're gonna see the instant green up. I have some videos on my channel regarding the comparison and stuff like that. And this is why you see all these lawn care guys go, oh my God, I put this, you know, great, you know, product down and all this kind of stuff. And it's, you know, whatever, you know, it's got nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. And they lead you to believe that because of this product, it's doing this because of this. And generally speaking, when you get a green up out of your lawn, there's only 4 nutrients that cause that green up: nitrogen, iron, manganese, and sulfur. Those are the only things that are gonna green up your lawn, okay? Everything else is a total, you know, misleading information, okay? Again, it doesn't matter what kind of nitrogen you use on your lawn, it's gonna green your lawn up, it's gonna make your lawn grow. Ammonium sulfate, urea, liquid, non-liquid, doesn't matter. Any kind of nitrogen product you put on your lawn is going to green your lawn up. So this guy's nitrogen is not any better than this guy's nitrogen, or this guy's nitrogen, or that guy's nitrogen. Nitrogen is nitrogen, okay? So as long as you know what you're putting down and how much you're putting down of it, there's a reason why ammonium sulfate is 2100 and urea is 4600, okay? Ammonium sulfate has less iron in it per pound. It has 21% nitrogen per pound. Urea has 46% nitrogen per pound. And all that means is that helps you calculate how many pounds you're putting in per 1,000 square feet. So if you use a pound of urea nitrogen at 4600 on 1,000 square feet, you're only putting in 46% nitrogen, okay? Half a pound of nitrogen, okay? So that's why that's an easy number to, good number to know. It's an easy number to work with. Basically, for every pound of urea per 1,000 square feet, you're putting down a half a pound of nitrogen, okay? With ammonium sulfate, you're putting down 20% or a fifth of a pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, okay? I hope those numbers help you and help you understand. Again, it doesn't matter what nitrogen product you're using. I repeat, it doesn't matter. I don't care if this guy tells you he's using Stay Green, this guy tells you he's using, you know, Joe Schmoes. This guy's using this lawn care guy, this guy's using this lawn care guy. It doesn't matter. Nitrogen is nitrogen is nitrogen, okay? It only matters how many pounds you're putting on, okay? If you put on a pound per 1,000 square feet of ammonium sulfate, you are not gonna get the same results if you put a pound of, and I'm talking actual, a weighed out amount of urea. If you put an actual pound in your spreader of urea, you're gonna get more green up out of that than if you put a pound of ammonium sulfate in your spreader and spread it over 1,000 square feet. Reason why? They are not equal. One is 20% nitrogen, the other one's 46% nitrogen. So please understand that, okay? Again, it doesn't matter. You can go to Home Depot, get their nitrogen, ammonium sulfate. You can go to Lowe's, get theirs. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what name is on it. Doesn't matter where it comes from. Doesn't matter if it's generic. Doesn't matter if you go to the farm supply store, the co-op, the tractor supply, whatever. Doesn't matter. Okay, nitrogen is nitrogen. Okay, if it's 2100, it's 21%. If it's 4600, it's 46%. If it's 3100, it's 31%. Okay, those are the numbers you need to know and you need to understand. And how you apply it is how your grass is going to react to it. Okay.